For months, astronomers assured us 3I Atlas would be nothing more than a stunning flyby, a harmless interstellar tourist that could skim beyond Mars and vanish into the black. But the cosmos does not do innocent without purpose. And James Webb, our most advanced eye inside the void, has just delivered data that flips the narrative upside down. The numbers have changed. The trajectory has shifted. And now, for the first time, scientists are whispering the one thing no one wanted to hear. 3I Atlas might hit Mars, but this is not just about a comet. This is about precision maneuvers, clock-like gas pulses, and an object that behaves far less like a rock and far more like a spacecraft. The deeper you go into the data, the clearer it becomes. 3I Atlas is not drifting. It's steering adjusting. Targeting in the red planet is suddenly in its path. Whatever this object is, it's not done with our solar system. Let's dive in. When 3I Atlas was first spotted on July 1st, it looked like every other interstellar interloper, a fast-moving blur with a glowing coma, traveling at speeds never before recorded for an inbound object nearly 87 kilometers per second relative to the Sun. At that velocity, it could cross the Earth-Moon distance in under 80 minutes. But what shocked scientists wasn't its speed. It was its behavior. Comets normally slow, fragment, or stabilize as they approach the inner system. But 3I Atlas began but continuously, even more worrying, its trajectory started tightening. Slight course corrections became apparent, and the object's comet's surrounding halo of gas and dust doubled in brightness within weeks. Spectral analysis revealed severe spikes in ultraviolet energy and CO outgassing at rates never seen before in any comet. It began to look less like a drifting chunk of frozen rock and more like a guided missile. And that's when Webb's deep space sensors caught something that changed everything. Rhythmic pulses coming from the tail. Not chaotic jets from sunlight melting ice, but deliberate thrusts in precise 17-minute intervals. A pattern, a signal, a maneuver. Webb, Gemini South. And NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory continued monitoring the object. The numbers began telling a terrifying story. What was once a near miss had become something far more dangerous. A revised closest approach distance of just 1.95 million kilometers from Mars, a hair's breadth on the cosmic scale. Worse still, simulations showed that even a 10 kilometers per second increase in velocity, a fraction of what's already being measured in those gas pulses, would be enough to shift its path into a direct hit. Think about that. Just a nudge, a whisper of thrust, and Mars becomes ground zero. This level of control is unprecedented in natural bodies. It's as if 3I Atlas is using its own outgassing as microthrusters, adjusting its approach the way a spacecraft would. Even more disturbing, those thrusts are perfectly aligned with the planet's orbital plane. Scientists are no longer just tracking an object. They're watching intent, and the window for impact keeps narrowing. Between September 19th and 30th, any single outburst could be the one that pushes it past the threshold. This isn't just the domain of amateur theorists or sci-fi fans anymore. Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb and his team have published a paper proposing something bold. 3I Atlas could be an engineered probe. The data supports it. Radar returns from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter and Goldstone antennas show metallic echoes nod to soft, watery signatures typical of comets. Internal NASA sources describe the reflections as unlike anything previously observed. Add to that the thin, needle-like green streams captured in amateur high-exposure images, 3 glowing beams converging toward Mars, pulsing in sync with the exhaust events, and the picture becomes disturbingly clear. This object isn't behaving naturally. Loeb outlines a scenario in which 3I Atlas is deliberately targeting Mars ether to crash, or worse, to deliver something. Probes, signals, spores, whatever it isn't coincidence. Mars is being approached with surgical precision, and humanity is forced to watch an operation we barely understand unfold before our eyes. What happens if it hits? The answer is almost incomprehensible. With an estimated mass of 10 billion tons and a velocity of 57 kilometers per second relative to Mars, the impact could unleash more than 2 million megatons of energy, hundreds of times more powerful than the largest nuclear detonation in Earth's history. The resulting crater would span roughly 60 kilometers wide and plunge 5 kilometers deep, ejecting debris into Mars orbit and beyond. Some of that material could eventually reach Earth, but the consequences go far beyond rock and dust. Mars hosts dozens of scientific assets, rovers, orbiters, experiments searching for life, and climate records spanning decades. An impact wouldn't just destroy hardware, it would erase generations of research, blind communication, arrays, and potentially trigger chemical or biological processes we are wholly unprepared for ESA. Roscosmos, CNSA, and JAXA have all initiated planetary defense discussions, not against an alien fleet, but against a single object behaving just a little too much like a vehicle. For years, scientists have speculated that Mars once had life and perhaps still harbors it deep beneath its rusty floor subsurface lakes. Dormant microbes, ancient ecosystems locked beneath permafrost. It's one of the primary reasons we've sent so many rovers, orbiters, and landers. But if 3I Atlas strikes, all of that turns into an organic unknown. The severe heat of impact would not simply vaporize the surface. It might crack open the deeper layers of Martian crust, exposing reservoirs we've never reached. And if 3I Atlas carries natural molecules or, worse, synthetic biology embedded in its outgassing trails, the fusion of Earth-independent evolution with Martian biology could result in genetic infection on a planetary scale. Some biologists call this panspermia in reverse. Not life spreading from Mars to Earth, but life being seeded into Mars intentionally. It raises a terrifying question. What if the intention was never destruction? What if the object is a delivery system, and Mars is the incubator? As 3I Atlas approached its closest point to Mars, the James Webb telescope locked onto the object for one final, extremely deep scan. The result was classified for 48 hours before a portion was released to the public. But leaks from within the Internet assignment tell a much darker story. On RSpec and MIRI, instruments detected lines of artificial polymers, molecules that resemble Earth-made plastics and carbon nanotubes intermixed with natural gases. These aren't the kinds of compounds that form in a vacuum or during cometary heating. These are engineered substances. Webb spectrographs also picked up persistent isotopic anomalies, notably in carbon and hydrogen, matching no known solar system object. In short, 3I Atlas contains things that should not exist in space, and all of it is heading straight toward a planet that may still be alive. Webb's data was shared privately with major space agencies. Emergency task forces were convened, not because we could stop it, but because we were running out of time to figure out what it actually is. As panic grew, NASA made a sudden move. Silence. The routine press releases stopped. The telemetry feeds from Perseverance and Tianwen once showed unexplained gaps. Questions about potential impact scenarios were redirected. Something had changed. Then, in a classified transmission later leaked by an internal whistleblower, a phrase appeared: impact protocol initiated. What does that mean? No one knows for certain, but insiders claim a series of encrypted signals were sent from Earth-based stations to all functioning Mars systems. Curious, considering there is no known method to deflect or intercept 3I Atlas unless, of course, the purpose of those signals wasn't to protect Mars, but to prepare it. If 3I Atlas is an intelligent system, even semi-autonomous, could be reacting to power signatures, orbital beacons, or encoded pulses. And if Earth's just activated those systems, we may have confirmed that we're listening. Worse, we may have confirmed that we're responding. And whatever intelligence is behind this object, if any, now knows that we are aware. A team of cryptographers at the SETI Institute did something no one had considered. They took the object's trajectory, time of closest approach, velocity, and gravitational vector zeta points known to every astronomer on Earth, and translated them into binary. They then applied standard compression algorithms used in deep space messaging. What emerged was more than random data. It was structured. Repeating. It contained a series of numerical sequences corresponding to atomic numbers: 6, 8, 14, 26, carbon, oxygen, silicon, iron, the building blocks of both life and machines. Interspersed were high-number countdowns and spacings, consistent with recursive messaging protocols. In short, the entire flight path of 3I Atlas may itself be a signal in motion, a message, not delivered by radio, but by behavior, by timing, by presence. This would mean we are not merely observing a trajectory toward Mars. We are witnessing a communicative event, and the impact window itself may be part of the message. The message. If it moves, it is a sentence. If it misses, it is another. In either manner, the solution is already written inside the stars. As the projected effect course narrowed, planetary scientists observed a chilling accident. 3I Atlas's up-to-date trajectory crossed a slim corridor that passes immediately above Elysium Planitia, a geologically young area of Mars recognized for its strangely symmetrical surface capabilities. Satellite imagery discovered concentric ridges, spiral-like flows, and formations that eerily mimic Fibonacci patterns. These weren't new, But what caught all of us attention was the fact that the precise vector of 3I Atlas's descent aligned with the principal depression, flawlessly circular basin, less than 3.5 kilometers wide. No known impact origin, no volcanic residue, but perfectly centered inside this basin was a deposit of crystalline silicates with refractive properties not found anywhere else on Mars. When hit by solar radiation, they emit quick pulses of infrared light at regular intervals. Most disregarded this as a geological curiosity. But now, scientists are asking, was this basin a random feature or a Bicona rendezvous point? And if so, who set the coordinates? Just as James Webb locked back onto 3I Atlas from its exchange tracking phase, an unexpected anomaly was discovered behind the primary body of the object, no longer physically connected, but trailing at a constant 0.07 astronomical units was a secondary shadow. It wasn't a debris field. It wasn't gas. It was something darker. Radar could not locate it. Infrared couldn't heat it, but photometric analysis showed a sharp drop in light that moved in perfect unison with 3I Atlas. As if tethered by some invisible force, this shadow maintained an exact distance, unperturbed by gravity or acceleration. And when vision in polar coordinates, it formed a perfect orbital trace. Something was following 3I Atlas, not escorting, not attacking, but mirroring. The speculation exploded. Was it a secondary object? A drone? A gravitational echo? Or something else entirely? A field? A memory? A protocol? For the first time, researchers began to consider the idea that 3 Atlas might not be the primary actor in this cosmic event, but merely the carrier of something more elusive. With all eyes now on the projected impact date, an even more unsettling pattern emerged. When scientists laid out the entire trajectory of 3I Atlas and its closest approaches to the Sun, Earth, and Mars, they observed that every alignment fell on astronomical resonance. Datesky orbital harmonics, long studied by ancient civilizations, September 23rd, October 5th, November 11th. These dates correspond not just to seasonal equinoxes and transits, but to rare gravitational synchronizations that occur in cycles of 54 years. In fact, the last time all 3 inner planets were in comparable orbital positions during a comet's passage was the Tunguska event of 1908. This synchronicity sent shockwaves through the scientific community. How could a random interstellar object arrive at such astronomically significant moments? Lest it wasn't random, lest it was timing itself, as though following a clock, not built by human hands. This wasn't celestial coincidence. It was a pattern. And patterns in space are almost always the signature of design. One final revelation pushed the conversation into a realm once considered taboo in mainstream science. Consciousness in motion. A neurocosmology team at Princeton, studying neural synchronization patterns during deep meditative states, observed something remarkable. When subjects were exposed to the pulsation frequencies emitted by 3I Atlas's light curve, particularly the 17-minute gas fence cycles, their brainwave activity synchronized not just within a single subject, but across multiple individuals in separate rooms, isolated and unaware. This wasn't simple resonance. This was neurological as if the signal wasn't merely mechanical, but cognitive and could affect us across millions of kilometers. What does that say about its origin? Is it possible that 3 Atlas is not a rock, not a spacecraft, but a thought moving through the universe like a seed of consciousness? A message you don't read, but feel. Something that activates when perceived. Something that becomes part of you the moment you understand it. If this is true, then the impact on Mars, physical or not, may be only a symptom. The real event may already be occurring within us. As fears surrounding the potential impact escalated, a quiet group of archaeoastronomers began cross-referencing 3I Atlas's trajectory with ancient sky maps records not only from Western observatories, but from Babylonian, Mayan, and Tibetan cosmological texts. What they discovered defied belief. A recurring motif known as the flame serpent appeared across cultures, describing a celestial body that descends from the outer dark, curves unnaturally close to the sun, and targets the red god, Mars. The pattern repeated in stone carvings and even cave etchings, each depicting the same sinuous path. But one artifact stood apart. A pre-Incan calendar stone from Tiwanaku showing 4 radiating lines emerging from Mars after the comet's descent. When processed through photogrammetry, those lines matched Webb's projected debris dispersion model for a Martian impact. What does this mean? That somehow, someone saw this coming, not in this century, but thousands of years ago. It suggests that 3I Atlas is not always merely passing through records. It is probably history repeating itself, and Mars might also no longer be the goal. It may be the trigger. Then something completely surprising befell. the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, quiet for days because of electricity conservation, detected a spike in xenon isotopes within the top Martian ecosystem. At first, scientists assumed it turned into solar radiation, but the composition became all incorrect. This wasn't being delivered from above. It became growing from beneath more, particularly from deep fissures close to Cerberus Fossae, one of the most geologically risky areas on Mars. Seismic activity spiked. Temperature readings rose by 3 degrees Kelvin in the subsurface layers, and in a twist that left the medical network in baffled silence. Magnetometer readings detected a vulnerable but established magnetic pulse wand that repeated every 17 minutes, the identical interval as 3 IATLAS's gas emissions. This turned into no longer a question of if the object could impact. It had become a question of whether or not Mars was already making ready for ATAS, if the planet wasn't being threatened, but being activated. Something inside the crust, dormant for millennia, had simply started to stir. With each passing hour, the idea of impact became less of a physical event and more of a temporal one. The network observed that light fluctuations from 3I Atlas were no longer steady with rotational spin. Instead, they followed a recursive, layered timing sequence. 7 pulses, pause, 3 pulses, pause, 13 pulses, and so forth. These numbers were not random. When graphed, they created a Fibonacci-based spiral, one frequently associated with natural growth, memory encoding, and even human DNA coiling. Mathematicians and cryptographers joined forces to decipher it and landed on a troubling hypothesis. 3. Atlas is transmitting time, but not in seconds or hours. In cycles, epochs. The object isn't just arriving, it's synchronizing. The countdown, it turns out, isn't to the moment of impact. It's to resonance, a convergence of power, orbit, and consciousness. And if this countdown ends, it may not carry an explosion, but a shift in perception. Or perhaps even in the very framework of reality as we know it. In the final 72 hours before the projected impact, a signal was detected, low frequency, infrasonic, inaudible to human ears, but unmistakable in its waveform. It wasn't coming from space. It wasn't even bouncing off Mars. It was originating from beneath Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in the solar system. This region, long thought geologically dead, suddenly emitted a structured harmonic frequency captured independently by orbiters from ESA, CNSA, and NASA. The signal matched no known natural phenomenon, but when isolated and visualized as a spectrogram, it formed a spiral mirror of the same waveform emitted by 3I Atlas. During its closest approach to the Sun, the scientific community fell silent. What does it mean when a planet responds to an object before it even arrives? Is Olympus Mons merely echoing, or is it communicating? Has Mars been awaiting this music-specific moment? And more importantly, if this is Mars waking up, what happens when it finally opens its eyes? As the final hours ticked by, a curious discovery emerged from a forgotten dataset, an old thermal experiment from the Mars Odyssey orbiter, taken nearly 2 decades ago. It revealed a faint heat signature beneath the surface of Utopia Planitia, dismissed at the time as solar reflection noise. But when the same region was rescanned, following the 3I Atlas approach, the heat pattern had not only returned, it had grown and now matched the shape of an ancient glyph carved into the stone walls of the D&M Fossae. The glyph, barely visible to the human eye, depicted a descending spiral colliding with a circle and what appeared to be planetary spheres, aligned at the moment of contact. The implications were staggering. Mars may preserve a memory not just of geology, but of an encoded celestial past. What if Mars isn't merely a planet? What if it's a recording device? And 3I Atlas is the playback key. Then, something impossible happened. High-resolution imagery from ESA's Mars Express captured movement in the dust fields south of Noctis Labyrinthus. Not wind, not rover activity. Something growing, a pattern forming in the sand.